Hello everyone. For our last talk before lunch break, we are going to discuss the state of no-code and what lies on the horizon. Please give a very warm welcome to founder and co-CEO of Bubble, Emmanuel Straznov. Welcome, Emmanuel. He will be accompanied by Lucien Tavanneau, CIO of Allegria Group. Welcome, Lucien.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, good morning. So this is going to be a bit of a different session. I think Emmanuel loves this format. But first, I wanted to give a little intro and say that Emmanuel, we're so happy to have you again at the summit. So you were here last year for the first edition. You chose to come back, and knowing what to expect. So thanks for coming back. You're obviously very dear to the NoCode Summit and the local community here of Bubblers and NoCoders at large. So for those who don't know Emmanuel, so he co-founded Bubble straight out of grad school with Josh, his co-founder, and it's been an overnight success of 10 years in the making, basically.
Some time.
It took a bit of time, yeah. And so Bubble, I don't know if you want to say a few words about Bubble before we dive in, but I'll leave you introduce your tool.
Sure. We're a full stack replacement, so we're a no-code platform that lets you build, at this point, pretty much any kind of web application. Like, it's actually really flexible when you know how to use it. So there is a little bit more of a learning curve than a lot of other tools, but then you can do a lot of things. And yeah, it's been 11 years. No-code has definitely changed dramatically since we started in 2012. I mean, in 2012, no-code was not even a word. And it's been fantastic to see this and to be part of this also.
All right, so this is something that you like to do, and we've been doing together a couple of times, and you've been doing it with other no-coders. Here is taking questions from the audience straight out and making it the whole part of the core part of your intervention. So we're going to do the same here, but I just wanted maybe to start to like with a fairly general question, but looking back at Bubble, and you were, I would say, the preferred choice for entrepreneurs and people launching the project, and you've grown with them, and now some of them are like having really big companies running on Bubble. So can you tell us a bit about this story, not your story, but the story of your users and what we've been building on Bubble, and how you've seen that impact, your platform? What are the like intensive use cases you've seen and that you're proud of, I guess, also?
It's hard to choose one particular story. I guess I'll use something pretty timely because it's about AI, and I actually know they're here, and they were talking earlier with Fabian from our team. One company, ThinkFlow AI, for instance, is something that I've been watching pretty closely. Okay. So two brothers from Berlin. At the beginning of the AI, I mean, AI has been around for a long time, but what really started happening late last year, they started facing the challenge of knowing which model is the right one to solve your problem, and decided to build a business around this. And a lot of the business, in fact, like the main web premise and the main platform they're using is built on Bubble. And pretty much in 6 months, they got to like 6,000 customers, raised the seed round of almost $2 million, which I don't actually, for people who know the Bubble story, I don't necessarily think that fundraising is that important. We didn't raise money for a very long time, but it is a testament of, not an overnight success, but a very rapid success for like two non-technical people, two people building, without technical resources to build their product on Bubble. And that's something really exciting to watch. That's really why we're doing this in the first place. Like, the people we're building for are really, founders scaling on the platform. And so watching this as an example, which again is particularly impressive because of how fast it went, but there has been many others, is really why I'm doing this in the first place, and I'm not getting tired of it.
But I'm guessing you're seeing more and more of these. Like, you highlighted one, but you're seeing more and more. So
yeah, by
for
definition,
Bubble, for Bubble
hopefully.
Specifically, what does this mean for you now that you're supporting so many bigger and bigger businesses now?
I mean, it's great. It does
more pressure, I guess.
It does mean more pressure, and it's more challenging. It's kind of the nature of the market we chose, like startups, because startups growing quickly do put some pressure on the platform, more so than other tools. If you have another use case, which is, for instance, focusing on internal tools, usually usage tends to be pretty flat, and that's how it's meant to be. When you're dealing with scaling startups, it scales very quickly, and so it does put a lot of challenges on the platform, but that's great. I mean, that's why we're here. We probably didn't choose the easiest path and easiest problem to solve, but I think if we solve that, though, then we have built something pretty extraordinary. And I think we're still very early on the way. I don't think we're anywhere close to the end of where we should be.
All right, so let's do it meetup style and pass the mic to the audience. I'm guessing you'll be grilled with very technical questions or maybe more high-level ones. And we don't filter out questions, so be ready. Who wants to open the stage with questions? Yes.
Thank you for being here. I have a question, might be too long, but I'm going to try to put it in English. I think others are waiting for the future features coming on Bubble, and the classic as nativity, as the BD key can allow us to have a Bubble app on App Store, Play Store. RGPD, for example, which is in France particularly, and as you were born in France but work in US, you have maybe double expertise about how things go for secured application here and how it goes in US. And AI, there are a lot of things coming on, and I can't wait to see how Bubble and you and your team are gonna integrate them. If I have to choose one, it's RGPD, and how is the best way, which is the best way to integrate them? We have the feeling that the CNIL is more looking at the efforts and the commitments than the results, but it's still a point of interrogation, a question that's not really clear. It's kind of cloudy, a little as my question.
Maybe you should take some of these key questions.
So I'm not exactly sure I can summarize this, to be honest. Is this more like focused on GDPR eventually? Or?
I think it can be focused on our RGPD.
Yeah, so on that front, you've been asked many times, so what's the latest on this topic? What are you, straight answer is like we're GDPR compliant, yes. What are you doing beyond that for data sovereignty and companies that want to go beyond GDPR?
And we have strengthened our approach on that pretty dramatically actually this year. Okay. I'm not sure if people saw that, but the Bubble for Enterprise announcement early in September, which was really about SOC 2 compliance and GDPR actually. So, for people who are not familiar with SOC 2, it's more of an international US concept. In Europe, people tend to use ISO 27.
Are you going to take the ISO one as well?
We're looking into it, but it's basically a way to ensure that we are implementing all the state-of-the-art standards to make sure that data is secure for our users, and that's something that is really trustworthy across the world. And so part of that GDPR was a big push that we did. I've considered us to be GDPR compliant before, but we did implement more things to make sure that and we had an external company looking at what we were doing to ensure that we were doing well. So at this point, I'm pretty comfortable with where we are regarding GDPR. One thing I would say though is that and that's true for Bubble users, most of that for other application builders on the NoCode platform because of the nature of our product and what people tend to do with it. You have to do yourself things carefully to be GDPR compliant yourself. Like it's not just about us being GDPR compliant. I've seen some people building apps in ways that are not secure because of some design choices they've made in the platform. That would be a problem, that are probably a problem with being GDPR compliant. So that's something we need to do together, us as a platform, and users that have to build their applications in the way that's solid. But today I feel pretty good about our position.
And I don't want to put you on the grill here, but we have a very, I would say, tech-savvy, knowledgeable audience about Bubble. So can you give us some specifics about what you've done for GDPR? Like you're saying, like we were GDPR, now we are even more GDPR. Like, what does this mean?
A lot of this is actually internal controls inside the company in terms of what people can.
Product technically.
I mean, there has been some stuff like that around how fast you implement security patches and stuff like this. But a lot of it is actually internal policies that is important. Yeah. Okay, to the question of like data allocation, because I know this is something top of mind for people. I'm from Europe, it's also top of mind for us. It's something we definitely are actively working toward. It's just a complicated problem to solve, to start having multiple data centers in multiple parts of the world. We have that for enterprise customers, because that's something we can offer then when we isolate them from the main user base. Having the main user base, having servers in different regions of the world is complicated. We're actively working toward that, but it's a long-term project. But it's definitely something we'll do.
Understood, but because we were seeing some software publishers here offering server location, not on the enterprise level, but at the first, like maybe paid plan, or not necessarily free plan, but paid plan at least, the first paid plan. So
I mean, that's what we're working towards.
So my question is more like, is it because of for legacy reason that it's difficult to do, or?
Yeah, I mean, the legacy, not legacy, but we didn't build it like that in the first place. It was not a thing in 2012. It was not that important.
It was different context.
That's one of the things you have when you start sooner than other people, is that you know less about the world, because we started earlier, and so we didn't build it in that way in the first place, and so we need to do some transformation to make it work. But if I were to start Bubble today, I would definitely think about multi-region hosting from the get-go.
Got it, okay. Thanks for being transparent about this. I don't know if we have another question. Yeah.
Hello guys. My question is related but simplest. I know there were much Bubble developer in Brazil, in France, and my question is, what's the podium today? And Emmanuel, can you give us numbers of app where they developed, and what's the podium?
We'll keep asking this question until France is #1, I think. But
yeah, well, unfortunately, France is not #1, so you please keep pushing. I would love, honestly, to see France #1 or #2 for that matter, because France for some time was #2, and it's not the case anymore. I mean, to be simple, I mean, the US is obviously the biggest one, as you would expect. The United Kingdom, UK and Brazil keep switching. I haven't checked as of this morning. Last week it was Brazil, but 3 or 4 weeks ago it was the UK, so it's really, really close. And then France is after that. One thing worth noting, though, is that the US is it's a double-digit percentage. It's more than 30% of our business, but everything else is actually below 8%. So we have an extremely distributed user base. Like, we're very global, which I think is extremely exciting. I think we have paying customers in more than 100 countries at this point, which is something that I'm really, really excited about, and I want to keep it that way. Because we're in France, I can be a little bit more honest about this. I would like to be France to be a little bit higher. So please help me doing this. Like
we're doing what we can here.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I'll say about NoCode in general and in France is that the community here is particularly vibrant compared to pretty much all the other markets we're seeing. Japan actually has a strong community. We don't necessarily see them as much because a lot of it is happening in Japanese, not in English. While here it's a bit of a mix. I mean, we're in Paris but speaking English. But I have to give a lot of credits to the French community of no-coders, because they did create something that I haven't seen in other markets yet.
And just random question, but how it's bubbling in China? Is it also like available, and do you have like a customer base there? I'm asking because this is one of the territory we don't talk so often, especially here.
Well, there is a reason for that. You don't have any cloud provider in China, basically. So, I mean, we're there. I mean,
you have to use the.
You can try to access Bubble.io in China. Probably works okay, but a bit slowly. But then it's not a great experience, and therefore we don't have a ton of users. We have a few users. I mean, it's one of the paying countries we have, but not many. And that's not much we can do until getting to the point where you start having operations in China and servers in China. So not something anywhere close to the roadmap. We'll do French European hosting first.
Thank you for that.
I mean, I lived in China for many years. I would love also to do something there, but this is not on the roadmap.
Got it. Another question, maybe? Yeah.
Hi. As a bubbler from the UK, I'm happy to hear that we're doing okay. A quick question on the horizon. What do you think the trends over the next sort of 2 to 3 years are going to be in the no-code area?
I think the trends in the coming few years about what, sorry?
Sorry, the trends in no-code generally in the next 2 to 3 years.
I mean, no-code is a tricky space because you have a lot of different interpretations of no-code, and in fact, I don't think we have competitors. So I'll talk about Bubble's perspective, which is probably going to be different from a lot of other players. But the trends we're seeing, scaling, I think, is something really important. And when I talk about scaling, I'm not talking about Bubble's scale. I mean, obviously, we also are scaling, but making sure our users can scale on the platform is very important. I hope that in a few years, we don't talk about startups raising a few millions of dollars of funding, but actually truly like well-established, large-scale businesses, maybe some, getting public. So for the next 3 years, it's definitely one big topic that we're seeing that we want to keep pushing that. I mean, that's what is driving a lot of our work internally. AI is probably another trend that we're still figuring out exactly how it's going to impact the space. I think there are very exciting opportunities there. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about this. But it's definitely something that that will be part of the no-code landscape going forward. And finally, in terms of user adoption and engagement, I want to keep pushing the idea that no-code is good for empowering people and democratizing access to technology. As we've seen, as no-code is getting a little bit more mature, we start seeing more companies moving a little bit more up market, and there is this...
You included, yeah?
Well, we can talk about that, actually. Not necessarily. I'd be happy. We can take a minute to talk about this. But there is, as a market gets, as a field, let's call no-code a field, gets a little bit more mature, there is a tendency for companies to move up market, and I want to make sure we don't forget that, why we're here in the first place, and at least at Bubble, the reason we're here in the first place is empower people that do not have access to technical resources and usually don't have a ton of access to funding because money can solve problems and you can find an engineering team to be able to launch the product they need either for a company that they want to start or to solve a problem that where technology would be great, a great way to solve it. And I want to make sure we keep doing that. So I don't know if as a market in its entirety, this is going to be an important trend for the next 3 years, but for us, it's definitely something that remains extremely top of mind.
Yeah, I think this is what we observed and what we can observe from if you just scroll for the booth here, many of the other software publishers are clearly moving up market to the enterprise segment, and we heard your statement just right now on like how you don't, I would say, forget to change your original mission, but how do you reconcile this with, like you mentioned, you just passed the SOC 2 compliance and you launched Bubble for enterprise. So how can you elaborate on the overall strategy, I would say, on Bubble from the market perspective?
Yeah, so there are a few things here. The first thing I'll say is that our we're not necessarily moving up market, but our users are becoming up markety, or I don't know how you want to see it. Like, for instance, one example that comes to mind in Paris, Cure, that started on us like 3-4 years ago. Their needs today are very different from their needs 3-4 years ago. And in many ways, their needs are becoming more enterprise-like. Not necessarily, well, GDPR definitely very top of mind for everyone here, but the bigger you get, it gets more important. In the United States, we actually start having sometimes SOC 2 compliance conversations with scaling startups because it is a way for them to ensure that what they're doing is secure, it's a way to get more funding and everything. So that's one of the drivers for us, is because our goal is to scale with our users. Mechanically, it's looking like we're moving up market a little bit, but we still have like the core of our marketing and the way we try to get users is very much for founding teams, like trying to have founders on the platform. So that's one thing. Then the second thing is, eventually, I'm hoping, and I know sometimes people say it's not necessarily the best way to run a business, to try to be everywhere and to do everything, but
I won't say that.
In the long term, my vision is that Bubble should be everywhere, including in very large companies. And so when we do some work that actually helps scaling startups succeed better on the platform, if it turns out to solve some problems for larger companies who do have real needs for no-code, I mean, no-code is actually not a new field in the enterprise world, then great. Like that's actually very exciting. Then the question is, how much time do we spend trying to work with larger companies versus keep sticking to founding teams and scaling startups. And then it's about a resource allocation problem. Today, like probably 70 or 80% of our resources are allocated to founding teams and scaling startups. We do experiment with enterprise and large accounts because it's interesting, and I would say they also deserve good products, to solve their problems. And so I think Bubble can be a great solution for that, but it's not our key focus today.
All right.
I've seen companies in the space actually changing that, like actually saying, moving deliberately to enterprise and not necessarily wanted to serve the long, what we call the long tail of very early stage organizations and individuals. I'm sure it's great for them, it works for them. It's not what Bubble is for.
Okay, yeah, so very clear. Thanks. Yeah, another question up there. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Tosan from another Bubble startup from Berlin. My question resonates well with what you said before. Maybe it boils down to when is Bubble ready for the first unicorn? Because we are here, right? Because we built our first version on Bubble, and now we're scaling very quickly and thinking about how the next 18 months are going to look like in terms of, like, do we stay on Bubble? What do we do? And everybody here tells us, yeah, there's always workarounds for everything, right? But like, I think this question maybe boils down very, very nicely in a way to this longer perspective of how do we plan if we're like quickly growing with the pace of developments within Bubble.
So just make sure I understand the question. Is Bubble ready for the next unicorn? If I had to summarize the question.
Or is it like, how do we plan scaling on Bubble? Like, how do we plan our 18-month roadmap, basically, to scale on Bubble? Is that it?
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at today, our biggest competitor, like the big incumbent, is Auto1, right? Like, we're building a platform for used TVs. And if they would want to now build their product on Bubble, nowadays it wouldn't work. Like, thousands of employees. Maybe you tell me, but like I would feel like from what our experience that maybe not yet there, right? Like, and our question is like, when are we there? So can we actually stay on Bubble for like forever for us, or are we not there yet?
So in a nutshell, can we stay on Bubble forever from startup to IPO?
Well, I mean, that's definitely the mission that we have and what we actively working toward to. And we'll do whatever is humanly possible, really, to ensure this is possible. Can I guarantee everything will ever be fine? No, but the truth is no one can, even if you have an engineering team. Like, one thing that I think is getting in the way of no-code sometimes is that people see these as tools, and then they see a limitation, and they're like, oh, or a problem, and they're like, okay, no-code, there is a problem with no-code. But the truth is, if you have your own engineering team, you're going to have a lot of problems, and that's okay, and that's part, the story of building software companies and scaling with software. But that's definitely where our heart is and where we put most of our energy. Could today a unicorn be built on Bubble? I think so. The challenge with this question, though, is that it really depends on what the business is and how you build your application. It's one thing we're actually trying to spend more energy on is how can we help our users build more efficient applications? Because depending on how you build, I've seen companies with not many users having issues, and I've seen companies with a ton of users scaling very nicely and gracefully because the way it was built was actually built in an efficient way. And I'm very aware that it's hard for our users to know at first what's good and not good in terms of design. I think the educational endeavors we've seen in the ecosystem and people training people are actually very helpful here because that's a way to get good practices. But I think there are many things we can build in our product to help educate people better and tell them, okay, this is not great, this is a much better way to build it. Because for people that are using Bubble, you know that there are multiple ways usually to do the same thing. And so I've seen companies scale very well, and I'm confident I don't know what the valuation would be, these numbers are usually not public, but I'm confident we could be having like unicorns on the platform. Could all unicorns, regardless of how they build things and what they do be on the platform today? Probably not, but that's something we're actively working toward. Again, back to these trends, like scale is very top of mind today when we think about product prioritization and just improving the platform. How do we ensure that we keep these companies and they don't leave? Whenever I see a company leaving us for scaling issues because they're getting too big, this really, really hurts because this is exactly why we built this company in the first place, and so I take that very personally, and I don't like that.
So, taking with a few companies in mind, like this, I guess a follow-up question is, people don't necessarily leave Bubble entirely. They start building also out of Bubble some components. So I'm thinking about, you mentioned Cure before. Well, we have Prelo here as well. These ones still use Bubble and in combination with other tools. So what are the combinations that yourself you've seen or that you particularly maybe like from a technical standpoint? Not that necessarily you would recommend, because Bubble does it all, but
so
you see.
I understand we have a little bit of a tricky positioning for people in a sense that there are two very important things in our philosophy. We want to be a fully integrated platform and a full stack replacement, and I think today we are the only one really doing this in the no-code world, which is, you have design, data, and logic that is something that is available to you, and you could really do pretty much anything without another tool for your application. At the same time, and I know sometimes it sounds a little bit contradictory, we're building our platform in a very open way because we think, especially given the market that we're serving, which is people building companies, it would be extremely dangerous to start putting limitations in how much they can connect to other systems, because at some point they would get to hitting a roadblock and then they have to migrate off the platform because they can't build the product they want to build. And so that's why the platform is so open, and therefore, yes, it's totally possible to integrate Bubble with other tools. I've seen people do that very well. I think one thing that, so there are two things here, like there is which tool they're using, and then the case of a company using Bubble and then building things with traditional code on the side. So I'll cover these two things. In terms of tools, I've seen play very well with Bubble. I think Zapier and Make are something that actually makes, you could do a lot of everything I think that you could do with this platform with Bubble, but it would take a ton of work to do that. And these platforms have created, like beautiful one-click flow integrations to actually start having different systems talking to each other, and in particular, some systems talking to your application. So that's one thing I've seen working very well. But I've also seen other people, a lot of users using different backends with Bubble. How I feel about that? I mean, I would love to have built everything so great that people don't feel the need to do that, but this is a big project that we have. Like being a full stack replacement means that we can't, focus on one thing and do it extremely well. We have to do everything extremely well, and by definition, if you have to do that, it takes more time. So it's going to take some time for us to get great at everything. But in the meantime, it's very reasonable for people to start integrating with different platforms, and that's okay because philosophically, I'm very open to that. When I think about the very long-term vision of Bubble, it's not going to be one system that does everything, but I want to be the system that everybody uses and that connects to other things when other platforms, other systems are better than ours to do things. Now, to your point about company scaling on the platform and start introducing code sometime and talking to the systems they're building, the two companies you mentioned are doing that. I think it's actually a testament of how powerful no-code is in some ways, because as they get bigger, and there are things where code is objectively better than no code, and there are still things where code is better than no code to build like something that is very particular to your business, then it's great. They're allocating the engineering resources just to work on that, so it's very efficient because they don't need to have engineers to do other things. And then their platform, the Bubble app, talks to that. I want to encourage companies that are scaling to do this. If it turns out that there's no no-code tool, and in particular not Bubble, to realize what they need to do, and they need to go back to code. AI is a perfect example. You're not going to build LLM models in no code for a long time. I mean, it's good, like, that takes a lot of technical work. So the company would be, you have engineers working on that particular thing with code because that's where code is the best, and then you use Bubble or another no-code tool for the things that you don't need to use no code for, and then you just have both systems talk to each other.
And I don't know if it's on purpose or not, you didn't mention mobile. You want to complete your answer on this? Or? Saying like this is maybe the most obvious for me.
This is definitely something that we're looking into. We'll be able to share more about our product roadmap in a couple of weeks in New York at our Bubble conference.
All right. Cool. Some teasing here, yeah? Some of you are coming, yeah. Another question?
And we hope to see you there, online or in person.
I think that's
Hello.
the size. 350.
Yeah. Hi, Roger. I work at a system integrator in the Netherlands, and we actually came here to search for more like hardcore business no-code tools, but we didn't find them. And if I now listen to your focus, I'm a little bit unsure what your vision is about these kind of business applications. And if Bubble, if you want to do a full stack stuff, could also be like a concurrent for like tools we used to work with, like Mendix and OutSystems, like the high profile tools. So I guess you know a lot about the low and no code area. So what do you think, and I'm not so happy with Mendix and OutSystems, so we are looking for better tools. So what do you think the no-code world is converting to in regard to these hardcore business applications with like 150 tables, thousands of business rules, microflows which have to be manageable and readable and composable. So I'm very curious to your opinion about these kind of things.
So I think the question is, are you going for the big guys, for Mendix market shares and OutSystems market shares?
It's currently not...
Not really the big guys, the low-code guys, I would say.
Yeah, it's currently not our market focus. I mean, again, we're exploring a little bit what it means to sell to large companies, but we're still very much focusing, on founding teams and startups. One thing I'll say, though, is that when you can do more, you can do less, and I'm very comfortable with what Bubble can do in the enterprise world for internal tools, because if you can build, a scaling company that has, millions of users and it's beautiful because it's customer-facing, when it's customer-facing, it has to be beautiful. You can definitely do great things internally. It would take a little bit more work to do it. So I'm excited about the internal use case because, as I said earlier, I think big companies deserve good tools to build good problems. I wouldn't necessarily say that Bubble is the best tool for everything. I would say it's great for the tools, for companies that are building tools internally or externally, but that are meant to look like an external-facing application with a nice user experience. If you're building for something to automate tasks inside the large companies, I do think there are companies that would do that better than we do.
So everyone seems to be circling around the enterprise question. And you announced Bubble for Enterprise, but basically the 80-20 rule, so you have all these startups. Everyone dreams of being an enterprise. Everyone's building on your platform to eventually become a big company. And the fear is everyone is going to move off or has to make a choice. So it's a very simple question. Are you adding a product owner for Bubble for Enterprise? That they only focus on those enterprise features. I can name 100 that could be added that would benefit. I'm an enterprise company. I have another one that's in China on Bubble. And there's a whole list of things that can be improved, but there doesn't seem to be a product owner owning that.
So yeah, so
a product owner, I mean, do we have an individual at Bubble owning that?
Yeah, that drives the product specifically
we do have
for
a senior
those.
PM owning that. I'm not sure that's
I mean,
interesting here, but yes, we do have a product owner, yes.
I think the question was, so you have Alan, right, the VP product?
Well, Alan leads product in general, so he oversees everything. But we do have, when you start serving large companies, you have some people that are responsible of doing what we can to serve them better. So we do have a product owner. What I'm talking about is the overall resource allocation, and on that front, the majority of our technical and engineering resources are for scaling startups.
So the product team is not necessarily, the work is not devised for enterprise versus others. It's more like general for the whole Bubble platform. I mean,
there is an overall roadmap, and we do have some product managers that own particular part of a customer. They don't own a customer, they're responsible for making sure Bubble serves better a particular ICP. And so we have some people, we have someone in fact for our enterprise users. And then we have to see how it fits the overall roadmap, obviously.
Hello, Jorge, CEO of Grante, a no-code, low-code agency. How you see the evolution of the no-coders profiles, Bubble profiles, in terms of now changing the segmentation of your users? Now it's more enterprise, and the evolution of the tool. Is the time of like citizen developer kind of over now with this evolution?
Yeah. I guess over the 11 years of the product, the initial users you had are maybe different from the users you have now. And so I guess not statistically, but overall, what's your impression, like how the community of Bubble developers has evolved? Have they matured, or what did you observe? I guess that's more or less like have the bubblers also evolved with the platform at the same time? You know, how is the crowd different today from?
I mean, definitely, and in fact, I mean, they've evolved with the entire no-code market. Like the level of knowledge people have, even when it's about choosing the different tools. Like 3-4 years ago, I felt like all the no-code tools were competing with each other because people weren't sure about what the different tools were doing relatively to each other. Today, if you ask me who we're competing with, I actually don't think I think every tool currently has its own segment of the no-code space and is doing it very well. And so we don't really compete with each other anymore. And the reason is because people are way more sophisticated about what the different tools are doing, which I think in events like this are very much helping everyone in that regard. So I think that's great. The concept of citizen developers is something pretty old, actually. Like it's something that was in the late 90s and the early 2000s. I think today we would call them no-coders, so it's just, I think it's a denomination change that just needs to happen, and a generational change also, like mathematically. People that were citizen developers in the late 90s are a little bit older than I think many people in this audience, and therefore there is a little bit of a transition that needs to happen, but from a personal standpoint, I think it's very similar. The one major thing that is a little bit different is the early tools that were not called no-code tools like 25 years ago that were used by citizen developers were tools used by inside big companies most of the time, while today no-code is a lot about the long tail of, again, founders, individuals, people starting agencies and everything. And so that's where there is a little bit of a change. I think the persona hasn't necessarily changed, but what they use as platforms for is changing. Now, not going back to enterprise, but as these people enter the workforce, and that's something we're seeing, the pool we're seeing for enterprise 100% of the time is because they have hired a Bubble user that has knows how to use Bubble and start seeing opportunities inside a large organization of how they use them. So I think we're going back a little bit to the citizen developer profile, but they're now called as no-coders just because a lot of no-coders are entering the workplace in larger companies.
I think we have another question over there. Yeah.
Hi, Pierre here. I've been a Bubble developer for about 3 years, and in the question of scaling startups, you mentioned something about it also depends how the app is built, which made me think about a discussion I had with many Bubble developers, even during the last 2 days in the Code Summit, around best practices on Bubble development, which right now we can see some coming from the communities, and because it's an open-ended tool, obviously, there's a lot of different ways to build on Bubble. But I was wondering if within Bubble you're thinking about, advocating for some best practices in the development of Bubble, or what is the thinking behind that to help people build in the same way, which will make it easier for people to build teams and build startups with following the best practices to build on Bubble?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, we launched as of last week, our certification open to everyone. We announced it earlier in the summer, and it was still in closed beta, on an invitation basis, because we wanted to make sure the test was good. But this is very much part of our effort of uplifting the average level of everyone in the ecosystem and making sure that Bubble developers are good developers and that people who can know who's good and not good, because when you're looking for a freelancer, it's hard to know if someone is going to be good or not good, and a certification, that's exactly what certifications are for. And certification, I don't know if you took the test, but a lot of that is about the right design patterns to make sure your application scales. So that's one way to address it. I would say it's the fastest way to address it because it doesn't take too much time to set that up versus start baking this in the product. The other way we're looking at this is how to bake that in the product, and we do both. But the end state is definitely that we want people to build applications in the way that works well, because it's better for everyone. It's better for the users, better for the end users, and it's better for us. And so we'll do whatever we can to start, and making sure that apps are built the right way, and if they're not built the right way, how can we run them in the right way?
Yeah, we've seen some tiny but important changes around privacy rules, for instance, when the default now is private, whereas it was the opposite before and so on. So do you have some other small but important features, or with an important impact at least, features that are coming?
This is a pretty important topic, and it's not about small features here and there. So I can't really give you a particularly exciting little feature that would help. This comes down a lot to big data manipulation, like when you start manipulating a lot of rows at the same time. One of the things that is the most costly for people in terms of resources and complexity is how they manipulate, tens of thousands of things in the database at the same time, in one time. And that's where it's not like a small feature. It's actually like a pretty significant work, both on the front end in the editor in terms of how people will be setting up what they need to do with data, and the way this gets executed in the back end, because manipulating many rows at the same time is a complex problem. And so that's something that is definitely a big priority for us, because again, it's something that people need pretty much for all the time in their journey, but in particular when they start scaling.
Could AI help into this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually surprised the AI didn't come a little bit sooner.
Like, don't do this, query like this is more efficient, like given your data structure.
It's potentially an there's potentially some exciting things you can do with AI in terms of the optimizing. In fact, I mean, a lot of companies without Gen AI have been using machine learning to optimize queries. So there are opportunities there. It's not necessarily where we're thinking about using AI most immediately in the editor, but that's something we could be exploring.
All right, a lot of teasing for the BubbleCon. Where's the mic? Yeah.
One thing I'll say about AI is that I think it's important to take your time to make sure you really create something that has value. When ChatGPT came out in November, I saw a lot of companies rushing into announcing some AI features in the editor, but I'm actually not sure it completely transformed the game. While I actually think it should transform the game in no-code. I think AI implemented the right way. The mission of AI, which is about empowering, about having computers and humans speak a better language, is particularly generative AI. Like you can start talking to ChatGPT and ChatGPT responds to you in plain English or plain French, is very exciting and extremely aligned with the reason we built Bubble in the first place. I mean, Bubble is not natural language programming, but it's visual and it's much closer than code, right? And so I think these two things should work together. They can accelerate each other into empowering more people to do things with machines, and that's something that needs to be done carefully. It takes a little bit of time, I think, to really make sure you nail this, but if you do that right, if we do this right, I think this can completely transform the space.
All right, yeah.
Hi, my name is Chris. I traveled all the way from Bergen in Norway to this conference to find an alternative to Power Apps and OutSystems. And I find it hard to understand where you're going with Bubble, because yesterday I was in a presentation with AppFarm, and they have like I would say a more full stack platform than Bubble. Are you going in the direction of Bubble, being like the competitor to AppFarm, to OutSystems, or to Power Apps?
So I guess the question is your product roadmap, which direction is it going? But the examples given were, I think, AppFarm, Power Apps, and OutSystems. So I don't know how you situate yourself first, maybe, or how you put Bubble into this. I don't know what are the coordinates we are talking about here. But
it's a bit challenging for me to define what we do comparing to other tools. It's not really how I think. I mean, the way I think about this is, are we solving the problem of our users? Is that the users we're building for? And is that moving us in the right direction? So I can't really make a general statement about how we compare ourselves to these tools. The little I know about these companies is that they usually more for like very large corporations building internal tools. It's not the primary use case we're building for. We're building for people wanting to build a beautiful, modern product, usually that is customer facing. If it's internal facing, that's great, but it has to, usually it's going to look like an external facing product. And so that's what we're doing, which I think is pretty far from some of these tools. But again, I don't think, one thing I keep repeating internally is that not to define what we do relatively to other tools. The question is more, is this user the type of user we're really building for? Is that a problem that they have? And what can we do to serve them better, regardless of what other guys are doing?
So generally speaking, you don't look too much at the competition, or?
Yeah, competition is not top of mind because...
You said the other actors, not the competition.
It's not top of mind because the market is growing so fast. I mean, if you just... I know sometimes analysts will come with like a no-code market size or stuff like that. If you look at the market in this way, then I guess, yes, we're competing. But the market I'm looking at, and that I think everyone here should be looking at, is software development market. People building applications or like websites, mobile apps, whatever you want. And this market is enormous. We collectively, like no-code actors, represent such a little piece. I mean, it's not even 1%, I think, of the entire market. And so the pie is so, like, I'm not trying to capture more of the cake. The cake is so big anyway that I'm just trying to do what's right for our users. Because if we do that, the fundamental forces of the market, which is, you know, people need to build software. People need to build software that is cheap, because cheaper in a cheaper way, because today it's really expensive to build software. You can't lose if you do that, and what other people are doing in the market is actually not relevant. In fact, we're all growing that market together. Like, we partner with, we don't partner like formally with companies, but our goal is to make that people stop thinking about no-code as a niche in the tech world, but that it becomes like the default for people to building things. And the more people we have that actually share the same message and improve their product in a way that convince people that are not in the no-code space that no-code is the right tool for them, like one no-code tool is going to be the right tool for them, is helping the cause. I mean, at some point, I mean, at the entrance we say it's a movement. It's truly a movement. Like, no-code is a movement in the sense that here we have very early adopters that are excited about this, but the whole world doesn't know about no-code yet. You know, like, people start hearing a little bit about it in the news, but no one has actually seen what it can do in practice. And so I think it's much more exciting to work together with other companies to increase how big the no-code space is, how much it's relevant for people that don't know about it, and try to compete with each other.
You have to use the mic, otherwise it won't go into the audience who is following online. Or maybe I can repeat your question, okay, if I can hear it from here. Okay, Margot is coming up.
And probably quickly, because I think we're at time.
Yeah.
Can I have just this one question? So my question is, you mentioned you have no competitors, but users can use two tools as viable substitutes for what Bubble does. For example, WeWeb and Xano. And for example, also to counter the point you just mentioned, Chrome did manage to monopolize browsers. YouTube did monopolize videos. So you have these companies with less legacy code and shipping faster. So my question is just, what makes you confident you won't be outcompeted in the next 5 years?
I'm sorry, I didn't get it either.
Okay, what makes you confident?
Can you summarize the question just in one question?
Okay, what makes you confident you won't be outcompeted in the next 5 years by, you know, teams shipping faster with less legacy code?
Okay, so yeah, okay, that's the question. Is like someone new coming in, no legacy, they can start with the latest frameworks and stuff. How do you care? And if you do, like, what do you put in place, like, to make sure, like, you're not going to be disrupted by?
Well, just by, you know, making sure we do good work and that we keep serving our users well and do what they need. I mean, like, I don't really know. Like, you're asking me, will someone be better than us? Maybe, I don't know.
Or maybe to put this more concrete, are you threatened by the WeWeb plus Xano combination, for instance?
Today, not really. I think this can get you to a product quickly, but I haven't seen anything currently on the market that lets you go as far as you can go on Bubble in terms of feature functionality. Like, pretty much any of the other tools I'm hearing, and that's totally fine, that's the positioning, is that at some point you're going to hit some limitations and going to have to move to something else. And today we don't see people leaving Bubble because of feature limitation. Like, the reason scale is so important is because that's where it hurts. When I was saying it hurts, sometimes we see people leaving because they're getting kind of too big for us and we can't accommodate what they need. And so when I think about all these other tools and the combinations, I think you can do great things with them, but most of the time when I see a company raising, like, for instance, like the $2 million round that I was mentioning earlier, they wouldn't be able to do that with a different tech stack, just because the level of customization it takes usually to create a business where the web platform that you're building is the core of your product and your company, it's usually not possible on other tools.
Got it. All right. And time is up, so I just want to conclude with one last question, Emmanuel. In a few weeks, you have the BubbleCon. So can you give us a few reasons to either go to New York or follow the conference online?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is a really exciting thing for us because it's the first time. Like, our users have been asking for a long time to gather with the Bubble team for a Bubble conference. So this is the first time after 11 years we do that. So very much looking forward to it. The idea is really to get together, like for the Bubble team and our users to meet together, and for Bubble, for team Bubblers, Bubble users to meet together. What we're hoping to get out of this is mostly talk about the roadmap and what's ahead for next year. We have some pretty exciting things. I've been instructed, it's hard, you know, I've been instructed not to share anything.
Stay between us.
Well, of course, and I think there's a camera over there. But something like sharing some, where we see the future development for our product. Like, it's not about no-code in general, it's really like a bubble conference, but to share about where we see the product going. And also, you know, have fun. I mean, the idea is, again, get together. Headquarters is where we are. I mean, New York is, Paris is very close to my heart, but you know, the New York office, we're a New York headquartered company, a big chunk of the team there. I don't think Bubble would have existed if Josh and I were not in New York when we started. And so it's great to be gathering with our users in New York physically, and then for everyone to tune in online.
What happened originally. All right. Thank you very much, Manuel, again, for
Thank you very much.
Doing this exercise. Yeah.